So for the past 24 to 48 hours, Katie Joy has been very upset on social media because she believes she and her husband have been accused of being racists or white supremacists. But that's not exactly what happened. And I'm going to cover what exactly did happen. But first I want to address the things that she said in her posts and tweets. Yesterday she tweeted, "This video is 100% false. She states as fact that my husband signed with a label with ties to white supremacy. My husband's band denounced the label after they signed a white nationalist band nearly a decade after his band signed their contract." And she links a video to Tea Spiracy's channel titled "Mr. Crystal Ball Signed a Deal with the Devil. The Disgusting Truth," I believe it goes on to say. Next, we have, he and his band members pulled their contract even though they owed the label 2 more records. They took a financial loss and found a record label that denounces all forms of racism. There were no white supremacists signed to his label when he was first signed. That's the truth. Next, we have, any of you reaching out to my husband via DM or on social media to demand he answer to a bullshit rumor that he's a white supremacist need to quit. He is not racist and none of you are entitled to a response from him. He's not a YouTuber. Leave him alone. Okay, here Melissa says, "This is all him. He's targeting you, Katie, and Radiant Brit. Neither of you deserve his stance going after you. This is sick. Oh, if you stand up to him, you're the R word. I'm so sorry to you." Todd says, "Well, it's certainly not surprising that he's willing to throw that accusation at anyone who stands up to him. Normally, I would just let it roll off my back. But what people like him don't understand, or more likely don't care, is that number one, once the pandemic has passed and I make the effort to get back into the workforce, this could be damaging in terms of future employment. And two, I actually am in the public eye, just not in the world of YouTube and vlogging. And I'm sure that if these rumors hit the world in which my public persona is known, it will definitely hurt me and my reputation." Todd goes on to say, "Very well stated. It's like we have 2 fights going on. We're fighting the people who make ridiculous claims and fighting the knuckle-dragging versatile idiots who've misappropriated the ruins. But I would say that we must fight to keep our history and heritage from these losers. You can't just lift out the Othala rune simply because some Odinist losers have bastardized it. They would be like doing away with the letter O from the Roman alphabet because some pile," and he goes on to give some stupid analogy. Okay, so those were some of Katie's first tweets on the issue, along with Todd's statement on the matter. Next, I want to pay attention to an Instagram Live that she did, along with a couple of YouTube videos from yesterday.
"We are somehow racists," which is not true. And then somebody sends me a clip of a video where basically this woman is accusing my husband of signing a record deal with a company or with a record label that has white supremacy ties. And the title is "Mr. Crystal Ball Signed a Deal with the Devil. The Disgusting Truth Sure Seems Crazy," which is false. My husband did not sign with a record label that had white supremacists on it. They were not active with that label when this specific band was signed, and as soon as my husband's band found out that they signed a band that had ties to white nationalism, they terminated their contract. They took a financial loss. They owed the label 2 more albums, but instead pulled everything and wanted nothing to do with this label, publicly denounced the label, and found a label that has 0 ties at all to white supremacy.
I just want to take a second here, though, and say that the label in question is Moribund Records. That's who Todd's band used to be signed with. Their new label, Bindrune Recordings, from what I can gather, they do not share the same racist beliefs as Moribund. In fact, from what I've read, they actually do take an opposite approach. So I just wanted to put that out there because I don't want this to sound like we're trashing Bindrune because they don't deserve it.
The facts are, when he was signed with that label, like more than a decade ago, they didn't have anyone of the sort on their label at all. It's insane. I don't care about 90% of the rumors that are started about me, but that's a rumor that can literally get you killed. Like, in this climate, if you accuse someone of being a racist or being a white supremacist, you can have people end up at your house with guns. We do not want anything like that, ever. We would never, ever support anything like that in a million years.
Who does she think is going to kill them for being white supremacists? I mean, I don't think she means like other racists are going to come and kill them, because what sense would that make? So that only leaves one thing. She thinks that those against racism are going to come and kill them. What? So instead of worrying about the black community being at risk from racist beliefs, she thinks that she could be at risk for being racist and be at risk by the black community. Make this make sense.
Darcy is one of my good friends that's in the chat. She knows me. She knows I don't lie. I don't know how to lie. Period. Like, I just don't lie.
What the
We live in a very conservative area.
So then it would be the conservatives that want to kill her?
Hey, baby doll.
Hi, this is my friend Darcy. She knows me in real life.
I can see the pain in your eyes right now, and I'm sorry. I'm really, really, really sorry, because that is not who you guys are at all. And if people only, like, you can do things through any social media, but when you are with somebody, you know that person, there is not 1 ounce of racism in your body. There is not 1 ounce.
I'm going to put this in the words of John Oliver. If we're going to rely on white people to vouch for whether or not other white people are racist, then why don't we just start having dingoes babysit our kids?
To lie about any of this kind of stuff, and like, there's a lot of things you can get mad at me for, but like, this kind of stuff is just dangerous. Don't accuse people of white supremacy. Does my husband make money? Why does that matter to you? Doing what? He didn't make money from that label. No, he didn't. Why are you being so nosy? Reality Tea Squad. Why does what my husband do bother you? So Tea Spiracy, your video is false. It's also defaming. And if you care about the truth, just take the video down. And people are misconstruing and deciding that because they don't understand, or they don't want to look for the information, or they don't want to, or they want to believe the lies, they are accusing him of really despicable things. And they are coming onto my Twitter and they're demanding that he answer to them, which, first of all, I just want to set like a hard boundary here. Like, you guys can do whatever you want. You can lob anything at me, but like, my husband is not a public figure. My husband is not a YouTuber. My husband is not on YouTube. He is not a part of this. He is not your property, or you're not entitled to know anything about him. We don't really share a lot about our lives. Today and yesterday, we have been bombarded by people accusing us of horrific things. And in today's climate, this is probably one of the worst things you want to be accused of, because this last summer was so terrible for the entire United States. We had so much injustice that happened. We live in Minneapolis. We grew up in Minneapolis. What happened to George Floyd was not far away from where we grew up. I've spoken out repeatedly about the injustices that so many people and people of color face. I have spoken out against all of this, like, police brutality. I have stood up and supported Black Lives Matter. I am against any form of racism, and so is my husband. We are so against any form of hate. And because he made a video where he was using runes, Nordic runes from the Vikings era, it's an alphabet. This is not just because, anyways, here's my husband's statement, because now people want to say that he is basically the worst, slimiest form of anything. And my husband will stick up for me, and I will stick up for him. And this is what he said. And this is a comment he made. I am a Norse heathen spiritual path, and I'm also a musician in black metal band, that they are using those things to come up with this narrative. Unfortunately, in those two worlds I just spoke of, there is a loud minority of people who actually are white supremacists. So they try to connect dots, but there is no connection. I am a dues-paying members of the Troth, which is an inclusive heathen community. I've also signed Proclamation 127, which is taking a direct stance against bigotry in any form. But because these people only know a tiny fraction about me and my life, they think they have all the info. And lastly, I'd like to say I respectfully, he's talking about wolves. So here's the thing. There's a heathen community that has taken over. There is bad people, a tiny fraction of people that have taken runes that are a language, right? They're the alphabet, part of the Vikings culture. My husband is Norwegian. My husband is also Swedish. and he's also a heathen, and he's Norse heathen pagan. And that alphabet has been, some of it, been appropriated by really bad people and taken over. And so people assume that because he is a heathen, he somehow is this bad person. And then there's this accusation about his record label and how they have ties to people that are bad, that are in this white nationalist movement. First of all, when my husband was signed to that label, it was like 2009. He put out 2 albums, and then he didn't put anything else out for years. And when they had to make a decision about what they were going to do in that time span, when they had no music putting out, when my husband got involved with that record label, they had no connections to any bands that had any ties to any form of white nationalism. They signed a band that did have ties to that, and my husband and his band left. They cut their contract. They took a loss. They actually had 2 more records that they needed to make, and they wanted nothing to do with that label. And they actually shopped and found a new label that has 0 connection to any of that, that would never be affiliated with any of that. Those bands were signed after my husband put out music, and those bands, and he never put out any music after those bands were signed because they wanted nothing to do with it. And it's not like performative, because this is the stuff that we do when we're not online. We don't have to tell anyone that we do this kind of stuff. It doesn't matter that if you know that we do this kind of stuff, because we do it regardless. Really frustrated because people show up on my Twitter and they're demanding answers that I just can't, under any circumstances, ever imagine going up to a mere stranger and telling them that they need to tell you or answer to this. Because this is something that we have literally talked about so many times. This is something that if you go through my husband's, all of his social media.
Would that be the social media that is now privated and locked down?
Right. It's being appropriated by hate groups, and it's not okay. And just because a hate group takes something over, the community itself doesn't lose their history. They don't get to lose their culture because some really bad people took some runes over because they decided that this was going to be theirs, right? I don't know how people can come up with this stuff because it's so opposite of who we are. And I understand, I am a public figure now, and there's a lot of interest in me. It's no different than me having grandparents from Germany, right? So my grandparents are from Germany. Does that make me? And you shouldn't have to feel ashamed of where you come from. And it's really sad that when people want to get angry, they want to play these dumb games of creating really big allegations. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand this. When I talk about things on my channel, I don't make things up just to make it up. These creators, I understand it, you guys. I get it. I do the same thing. I'm not having a thin skin. I put out videos too about people, and I talk about people. But I'm also very convicted about a lot of things, and that is I will never be okay with being called a racist. Telling me that I need to not talk for my husband. My husband doesn't have a channel that he's going to go on and talk about this with. My husband isn't on this channel. He doesn't owe you guys anything. And then when I spoke for him, I was accused of speaking for him and that he needs to speak for people himself. And I said, no, he doesn't need to speak for himself. Do not try to follow his private accounts. His private accounts, his social media is private for a reason. And people accuse me of putting out lies. People accuse me of not doing my fact checking. People accuse me of spreading misinformation. But it appears as though none of you are actually doing any research, not doing any fact checking, and certainly not providing any sources for the reasons for why you've come to these conclusions.
And next we have a tweet where she made a statement today. Due to a defamatory and dangerous rumor regarding my family and husband, we are addressing recent videos accusing my husband and his band of being white supremacists. In this political climate, making accusations like this is not only irresponsible but dangerous. Our statement is as follows. 1. My husband's band is not anti-Semitic or racist. Moribund Records is a large independent label that globally distributes metal music. Canisters signed with the label for global distribution purposes. They were signed to a 2-album contract with an option for a 3rd, which they fulfilled in 2012. 2. The band was on hiatus from 2012 to 2019 due to our son's medical condition. When the band regrouped to record their 3rd album, they became aware of an album published by Moribund that was by a controversial band known for anti-Semitic lyrics. Moribund offered Canisters the 3rd album option. Canisters declined because of their association with this band. 3. Canisteris condemns racism and anti-Semitism. Their new label also condemns racism and white supremacy. 4. None of the music made by Canisteris is anti-Semitic or racist. 5. Labeling Canisteris racist or anti-Semitic is defamatory and untrue. 6. Canisteris is a group composed of heathen men that have signed Proclamation 127 denouncing racism, white supremacy, and hate. 7. My husband is a member of the Troth, a German heathen religious organization. The organization denounces discrimination. 8. What is the Troth? The Troth exists in order to celebrate our religious and cultural heritage rather than to promote political, racial, social, or other agendas. Membership in the Troth and participation in our activities is open to worthy folks regardless of race, ethnic origin, gender, or sexual orientation, and we do not permit discrimination on these grounds in the activities of the Troth or any of its affiliated groups. If you feel drawn to the ways of the heathen North and would like to participate in our growing community, we invite you to drop us a line at the email addresses listed here. Help us in the challenging work of restoring the Elder Troth to a proud, open, and active role in our society, culture, and world. The old gods are calling. To hear their call is a joy, an honor, and also a duty. If they are calling to you, it is time to take your place among friends and kin and bring new honor and strength to our ancient heathen faith. 9. Canisteris is an independent band. They are not paid by their record labels, don't tour, and don't make music for profit. They did not receive any payment from Moribund Records. 10. Guilt by association is not guilt. Because bad actors exist in the world of metal does not mean all artists are bad. This is a dangerous and slippery slope. It would be akin to saying artists signed to RCA or Jive are pedophiles because R. Kelly is charged with these crimes. 11. Implying malicious intent to my husband and his band for signing with Moribund Records is defamatory and untrue. Okay, now that we know what Katie's story is and what Todd's story is, why don't we actually look at the facts and see what information we can find online, information that's verifiable. Okay, this is from a January 6, 2000 article called The Price is White. In the article, it discusses how racist metal bands are really a multi-million-dollar industry now. It says, in fact, a report coming out this month warns that Moribund is part of a multi-million-dollar industry that's pushing racist rock. So as far back as 2000, that's 21 years ago, this label was known for signing racist bands. Further on down the page of this article, it says, Thompson says this label, which he started in 1991, is not political or racist, but encourages freedom of speech. There's a difference between being proud of one's heritage or culture and being flat out racist or prejudiced to other cultures. I just wanted to point this out here because in this interview, he's saying how he's just proud of his heritage or culture rather than being racist. You know, kind of like one Norseman we know, how proud he is of his ruins. Okay, this next screenshot is a Moribund called 2015 mail order catalog. It's the first page of the listings of all the albums and everything that they have for sale in their mail order catalog. And this next screenshot is the second page of this catalog. And down here towards the bottom, you can see Dead 137, Dead 181. Both of those are advertising Canisteris albums for sale for $10.99 each. This next screenshot is from a forum post. It's a list of labels to avoid should you not want to give money to labels for racist reasons or otherwise. It says, this list is here largely to inform. While many of these labels make themselves obvious from their lineup and bands, some of the more devious and add-in bands that aren't associated with the ideologists pick up the rights to albums from other less shady labels. Okay, and number 57 on this list was Moribund Records. Okay, I'm actually upset about this one since these guys were the label for IAT, one of Lebanon's better black metal acts. But it seems these guys are now actively trying to sue platforms like PayPal and even some credit card companies for kicking neo-Nazis off their platforms. Okay, this next screenshot is from an article discussing how PayPal deplatformed certain labels, including Moribund. It goes on to say, what we do find interesting is that the same SJW language, claims of right-wing extremists and neo-Nazi activity, is found in the letter sent to HHR. And it goes on to discuss how they didn't even notify the labels or anything, they just dropped them because of their views. And this last screenshot comes from an interview that Todd gave the summer of 2019. The interviewer asks, your first two albums were released by Moribund Records, and I must admit it felt like ages since I last heard the name. Perhaps I even confused it with another label. Anyway, both of you being label owners back then, what made you decide to work with Moribund, and did this cooperation succeed in terms of making more people aware of Canisteris, whom you might not have reached through God is Myth, which is Todd's record label at the time? Todd says, ha ha ha, I must admit that the name God is Myth Records is one of my favorite things I've ever done in the music business. And as far as Moribund goes, you pretty hit the nail on the head. We simply decided at the time that Moribund was the best label for us due to the fact that they have worldwide distribution. So we signed a 2-album 10-year deal with them, which now makes us free agents as that contract expires in August of this year. That would be August of 2019. So when we look at all the facts and the actual information, we see that Todd was signed for 10 years and for 2 albums. He himself said this in the interview. He was signed in the year 2009, and his contract expired in August 2019. So that's 10 years, and there were 2 albums released under Moribund. So he fulfilled the terms of his contract. Now, Katie says that they decided to leave Moribund after 2012, but they stayed stagnant for years and then they decided to leave. I can't. It's not really that clear on what she's trying to say there. However, that's not what happened. If that was what happened, then I'm sure Todd would have said so in the interview. There's also no evidence and nothing to suggest that they denounced the label afterwards. In fact, no one says anything, and they both vehemently avoid answering these questions. It wasn't until it was a video regarding the phone calls to the brewery where Katie was the first person to say something, and she says that they left the label because the label was doing gross things. I mean, she couldn't even call it racism then. She just called it gross. In addition to that, they did not lose any money. I mean, they didn't have to forfeit any money. They fulfilled the terms of their contract. They probably were offered an extension on their contract, and they probably were offered an opportunity to record a 3rd album, and they probably did turn it down. I don't doubt any of that. However, that was never included. They didn't turn it down and screw themselves to make the right choice. They were given the opportunity to choose whatever they wanted, and they did. They chose what they wanted. They also didn't leave 2 albums on the table that they needed to record. They recorded the 2 albums that they had to record according to their contract. As we saw, according to news articles, the label was known for signing racist bands as early as the year 2000. So they already had the reputation by the year 2009 of having signed racist bands. And whether they had the reputation or not, whether there was common knowledge or not, they were signing racist bands. So for Katie to say there were no bands of that nature signed with the label when her husband signed is a lie. And he himself was a record label owner. So I'm sure for him to make the decision to have another label work with him and release his albums, it would have had to have been for good reason, and such a good reason would not have come without any kind of research or investigation on his part into who the better choice would be. He chose Moribund. Moribund chose him. Okay, and I'm not even saying that there's anything wrong with that. Okay, for whatever reasons, I mean, he said because they had worldwide distribution. I think that that's a very valid reason for choosing a record label. I'm not even giving him crap for that. However, just stop the lying. Stop lying. I mean, the facts are out there. They've been out there for a year. This would have all been over with by now if one of them had just come out and said, you know what, you're right. It was stupid. It was dumb. It was very just inconsiderate on my part. I wish I could go back in time and change it, but I can't. However, thank you for bringing this to my attention and for the opportunity to address this with the public. And I won't do this again in the future. I mean, I will be more considerate. This would have been over the second that statement was done. But because of the lying, because of the immense denial, because it's almost like they're afraid, like they're deathly afraid to admit that they did something that might have been perceived to some people as racially insensitive, because they just can't reflect on themselves. It just makes them look almost like they are racist. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do not think Katie or Todd are intentionally racist. Not at all. In fact, I think the majority of white people are not intentionally racist. But it's just that, though. I mean, we're white, so we don't always know what behavior or what things that we say or do are going to come across as racist or racially insensitive. We don't know. We can't know. So if we don't know, then we don't know enough to say what isn't racist. So we really have no authority to speak on this matter. The best thing we can do is, as white people, is just listen. That's it. Just listen. I mean, let the experts, the people who are experts in knowing what it feels like and what racism looks like and feels like and what they deal with, let them tell us what is and what isn't racist. Don't argue with them. When they come out and say, listen, this image, this rune or whatever, or this statement or this behavior, it's racially insensitive, or even just it comes off as racist, whatever. When someone says that, when a black person or the community says that to you, you don't argue. You don't tell them how, no, this isn't the original meaning of the thing in question. The original meaning was something of peace. And because this other group took it and changed the meaning, I shouldn't have to give it up. I'm sorry. I'm not going to put people ahead of a design. I mean, to say that is just kind of being a dick. I mean, we all make mistakes. I mean, I guarantee you that in the making of this video here, there's probably several moments here where I said something pretty shitty that came off as racist or racially insensitive. And I'm sorry. I just, like I said before, I don't always know. And I apologize. But I'm just saying, though, I acknowledge this. I realize this. I realize that for the rest of my life, there will be something that I didn't realize before. And I'll do it and say it. But then I will have realized, or I will have had it explained to me, and then I will realize. That's just how it is. It's not our fault necessarily until we start